I'm Layla Bennett, 28 years old, and my life changed forever during what was supposed to be a simple family vacation to Colorado. What my family thought would be a hilarious prank, abandoning me at a gas station in Wyoming, became the unexpected catalyst for everything that came after. "Let's see if she can make it back on her own," they laughed as they drove away. But I never did come back, not for 16 years. The family that left me stranded that day eventually found me, but by then, I wasn't the same girl they'd discarded. Growing up in the Bennett household meant developing a thick skin early. My parents, Denise and Malcolm, believed tough love meant turning humiliation into family bonding. My older brothers, Marcus and Liam, took those lessons to heart. Everything in our family felt like a competition disguised as affection. Our photo albums were filled with moments that, from the outside, looked like family fun. But I remembered the tears behind every picture. My 10th birthday, when they convinced me no one would show up, only to surprise me after hours of crying. My middle school graduation, where they arrived late on purpose. Prom night, when they gave my date the wrong address. Every event followed by the same line: "Can't you take a joke, Layla?" Mom specialized in backhanded compliments. "That dress would look amazing if you lost 10 pounds. Or, "You'd be so pretty if you smiled more and fixed your skin." Dad didn't sauce her with subtlety. He just laughed the loudest when my brothers set me up for humiliation. Marcus, at 32, worked with Dad at the family's insurance firm, positioned to take over Hyundai. Liam, 30, managed the firm's marketing. I just graduated with a degree in graphic design 3 weeks before our so-called celebratory trip. I'd told them I wanted to work in a design agency in Chicago, but they dismissed it immediately. "You can do your little art projects for the company," Mom said at dinner after my graduation. "It's better than chasing fantasies." Financially, I was still stuck. My student loans loomed large, and they paid for my apartment but never let me forget it. "You should be grateful," Dad would remind me. I was working part-time at a coffee shop, barely scraping by. The Colorado trip was supposed to be a fresh start, maybe the last one before I cut ties and looked for work in earnest. We piled into the SUV, headed west. As I put my bag in the trunk, Liam chuckled. "You remembered your brain this time?" A callback to the time I'd forgotten a swimsuit years ago, and they refused to buy me another one. I spent that whole beach trip fully clothed, and they never let me forget it. Day one of the road trip was classic Bennett cruelty. Marcus hid my phone and watched me panic before handing it over with a smug smile. Liam ate the lunch I'd packed. Dad took a wrong turn, then blamed me for misreading the map. That night in the hotel in Nebraska, I heard them talking through the thin wall. "She's too soft," Mom said. "The world's going to crush her." "Maybe this trip will toughen her up," Dad replied. I fell asleep with a sick feeling in my stomach, telling myself, just a few more days. The second day was unusually pleasant. That should have been my first clue. Kindness in our family usually meant a storm was coming. We crossed into Wyoming just past noon, the wide-open plains stretching forever. "Let's fill up," Dad said, as we pulled into a little station outside a town called Redvale. The gas station looked like something out of a forgotten postcard, tiny convenience store, single pump, and nothing but land in every direction. "I'm going to use the restroom and grab snacks," I said. "Anyone want anything?" "Soda," Marcus mumbled, eyes on his phone. "Jerky," Liam added. Mom was adjusting her lipstick. I stepped inside, used the restroom, picked up what they asked for, plus a bottle of water and chips for myself. The cashier, a woman named Carla with kind eyes, smiled as she rang me up. "Passing through?" she asked. "Vacation," I replied. "Enjoy it," she said. Her words echoed strangely, like the last sentence before the end of a chapter. I pushed the door open and froze. The SUV was gone. I blinked, convinced I'd walked out the wrong door. I circled the station. Nothing. I called Dad. Voicemail. Mom. Voicemail. Marcus answered. "Where are you?" I asked. Laughter in the background. "About 20 miles down the road." "What? Turn around and get me." "Let's see if you can make it back on your own," Marcus called out behind him, followed by more laughter. "This isn't funny," I snapped. "Tell Dad to come back." "Check your messages," Liam said, and hung up. A photo was waiting, the three of them in the SUV grinning. Caption: "Survival of the fittest, sis. Let's see what you got." I called every number again. Nothing. Blocked. I stood in the Wyoming sun, stunned, sweating, clutching a plastic bag of snacks and wondering what the hell just happened. My wallet had $43. My debit card had maybe $200. My ID was in there. My suitcase gone. My phone was at 18%. The hours ticked by. No messages, no return, just another photo of them eating dinner. The caption, "Think she's found food yet?" Carla came out, wiping her hands on her apron. "Sweetheart, you've been out here for 3 hours. Everything okay?" I burst into tears, told her the whole story, her face twisted with disbelief. "They left you on purpose?" "They call it a character-building exercise," I said, wiping my eyes. "It's a pattern. This is just the worst one." "Got anyone to call?" "No," I whispered. "No one close. That's how they like it." The sun sank. Temperature dropped. My phone battery dropped with it. Then it died. Carla touched my shoulder. "I know someone. Her name's Janine. She rents out a room sometimes. Stay there tonight. We'll figure things out tomorrow." Janine was in her 60s, silver-haired, with a quiet kindness that felt unfamiliar. Her house was a few blocks from the gas station. The spare room was small but clean. She handed me a nightgown and some toiletries. "We'll sort it out in the morning," she said. That night, lying on the twin bed, I cried myself dry. Still half expecting them to call to say it had gone too far. Morning came. No word. Janine made coffee and toast. I called every number again from her landline. No answer. Called the family business line. The receptionist said they were in a meeting. Took a message. They never called back. I charged my phone. Opened it. More messages. From Marcus. Day 2 of Layla's adventure. From Liam. Started hitchhiking yet? From Dad. Called your landlord, rent's done. Consider this motivation. And from Mom. This is for your own good. You need to learn self-reliance. My stomach clenched. I checked my bank account. $274. Carla found me staring at the phone, frozen. "They're not coming back," I whispered, "and they stopped paying for my apartment." Janine didn't flinch. "Then you stay. I charge $300 a month, but you can work it off in my bookstore till you figure it out." The bookstore was called Dog-Eared Books, dusty, quiet, with a sleepy cat curled in the window. "We need help organizing. Maybe flyers, maybe the website. You said you do design?" Janine asked. I nodded. "And you'll need a job that pays," she added. That afternoon, I walked every block of Redvale, applied at every shop, diner, and hardware store. That night, I cried again, but there was a flicker of resolve. Something had cracked. Something else had begun to grow. I wasn't going back, not this time. The first week in Redvale passed in a haze of exhaustion, grief, and quiet determination. I woke each day before dawn to begin my shift at the Red Table Diner, the only breakfast place in town that opened at 6. I took the job without hesitation when the owner, a wiry woman named Nancy with a sharp tongue and a soft heart, glanced at my application and said, "You any good with a coffee pot?" I said I could learn. That was enough. I served coffee, wiped tables, and memorized the names of regulars. At 2 p.m., I clocked out and walked straight to dog-eared books, where Janine waited with a list of things to fix. Most days, I collapsed into bed at 10 p.m., too tired to cry. But the tears always found a crack in the armor. Sometimes in the middle of folding menus, sometimes while brushing my teeth. And yet, beneath the ache, something unfamiliar began to take root. I was making it. Barely. But I was. The locals were curious but kind. Most didn't ask about my past. Those who did were satisfied with a vague answer. Just needed a new start. Only one person pried Amber. She was 25, a single mother of a 6-year-old named Lucas, and worked the lunch shift with me at the diner. She found me one afternoon crying in the supply closet, crouched behind boxes of napkins and ketchup packets. She didn't say anything at first, just sat beside me and waited. "Family trouble?" she asked after a long silence. The words spilled out. Not just the gas station. The years before. The jokes that weren't jokes. The dinner tables that felt like trial courts. When I finished, Amber didn't look shocked, just sad. "Sounds like they did you a favor," she said quietly. "They showed you who they really are. Now you're free." I didn't know how to respond. Free wasn't the word I'd used. Trapped, lost, terrified. But something about how she said it like freedom could mean not going back stuck with me. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to scramble to return to Chicago. I wasn't going to beg for scraps from the people who had taught me love was a weapon. I would stay, at least for now. The next day, I emailed my former professors from the library computer. I told them, vaguely, that I'd had to relocate suddenly and was trying to rebuild. 2 of them responded quickly, offering references. One even asked if I wanted to volunteer for a remote alumni design project. I said yes. Janine, meanwhile, was ecstatic about the new flyers I designed for the bookstore's upcoming poetry night. "It looks like something from a real publisher," she said, pinning it to the window with pride. "That's what you are," she added. "You're the real deal." I hadn't heard those words before, not without a punchline following. That same week, she introduced me to a man named Malcolm, or Mal, as everyone called him. Mid-30s, shaggy-haired, coder vibe. He worked from home doing web development and lived in Redvale for the hiking and the lack of traffic. "Janine says you're good with visuals," he said, flipping through the small printout of my old college portfolio I'd brought to show. "I suck at layout and branding. If you're interested, I've got a few client projects you could help with, maybe more." I nodded, trying not to seem too eager. That night, he sent me a test task, a redesign of a local bakery's logo. I sent it back the next morning. He emailed back within an hour, "Let's work together." I stared at the screen in shock. That was the first time I'd felt a flicker of not just surviving, but building. Within weeks, I was splitting my time between the diner, the bookstore, and freelance work with Mal. My bank account crossed $1,000 for the first time in years. When I hit $1,800, I paid Janine for 2 months' rent in advance and asked if she'd mind if I painted the spare room a lighter color. "Honey," she said, "if you wanted to turn it into an art studio, be my guest." Every week, I designed a new flyer for the bookstore and watched, amazed, as foot traffic slowly increased. People came in asking about events. Someone mentioned the website. Janine looked sheepish. "It's ancient," she said. "My nephew made it when he was in high school. He's 30 now." I offered to rebuild it. "You can do that?" "With Mal's help," I said. And we did. I spent hours in the evenings learning basic code, watching tutorials and sending screenshots back and forth with Mal. The new site went live a month later. Clean, mobile-friendly. And for the first time, dog-eared books could process online orders. Janine cried when she saw it. "You've done more for this place in 6 weeks than I've done in 6 years." My confidence grew in tandem with my skills. I stopped checking my old phone for messages. I deleted my family's numbers from memory. The last message I had saved from my mother simply said, "Call us when you've grown up." I had, but I wouldn't be calling. Mal referred me to a small clothing boutique in a nearby town. They needed a logo and a lookbook. I undercharged, terrified they'd say no. They said yes, then recommended me to another. By month 3, I was booked out for 2 months ahead. I quit the diner. Nancy hugged me and said, "You were never meant to sling hash forever." I moved out of Janine's guest room and into a tiny studio above the Red Veil hardware store. The ceiling leaked in one corner, but the windows caught the golden afternoon light just right. I bought a plant. My first. A cactus. Low maintenance. Fierce in its own way. I named it Vera. That same week, Mal invited me to work full-time on a new startup he was helping launch. I accepted, scared out of my mind and thrilled. On the day I moved into my new apartment, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I picked up, assuming it was a client. "Layla?" The voice stopped me cold. "It's Marcus. Don't hang up." I didn't speak. "We're worried about you. It's been months. The joke's over." "Joke?" I said, my voice flat. "You left me in another state and cut off my rent. That's not a joke." "Come on. We figured you'd find your way back in a few days. You're resourceful." "I'm not coming back," I said. "I have a job, a business, an apartment. I'm fine." There was a long pause. "Mom and Dad want to talk to you." "I don't want to talk to them." I hung up. Then I blocked the number. I stood in the middle of my tiny apartment, heart racing, hands shaking, and smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it didn't undo me. They expected me to beg. Instead, I was building something they never imagined I could. I lit a candle, placed Vera on the windowsill, and whispered to myself, "I'm still here." 3 months after that phone call, I thought it was over. I had blocked every number I recognized, filtered my emails, changed my mailing address, and even removed my last name from the business registry website. Mal and I had just finalized our 5th client contract for a local artisan collective when Janine burst into the bookstore holding a glossy magazine. "You need to see this," she said, dropping it onto the counter. There I was smiling in front of the window of dog-eared books, holding a laptop in one hand and a coffee cup in the other. The title above the article read, "Designin' from the Middle of Nowhere, How One Woman Turned Small Town Struggles into Big-Time Success." I hadn't expected the photo shoot to feel so public. Hadn't expected my new identity to be broadcast across the region. I'd only agreed to the interview because I wanted to show that success didn't require a big city or a famous name. I forgot that my face was still familiar to people I didn't want to find me. The article went viral in a small but powerful way. A week later, I came back from running errands and found Barbara Bennett, my mother, sitting in the reading nook of dog-eared books, flipping through The Great Alone. I froze in the doorway, heart thudding. She stood when she saw me, her movement slower than I remembered but still composed, still precise, still wearing the same crisp slacks and pearl earrings. "Hello, Layla," she said. "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice sharp and low. "The magazine," she replied simply. "I came to talk, not to fight." I considered walking away, locking the door behind me, pretending she was a customer and nothing more. But some small ache in my chest whispered that I was strong enough now to listen. I led her into the back office and closed the door. "What do you want?" I asked, not sitting. She hesitated before speaking. "We've been trying to reach you. Your father hired someone to find you after Marcus saw you in Denver. We didn't expect this." She gestured to the laminated client posters on the wall, to the humming laptop, to my life. "I wasn't hiding," I said. "I just didn't want to be found." "It was a mistake," she said. "A terrible, terrible mistake. What happened in Wyoming wasn't isolated," I interrupted. "It was the culmination of everything, every joke that humiliated me. Every time you made me feel worthless. It was the final chapter in a book I didn't write but had to survive." She didn't deny it. She just nodded, slowly, as if the weight of years had finally reached her shoulders. "Your father regrets it deeply," she said. "He's not well. He wants to talk. Before it's too late." "Before what?" I asked. "Before he dies?" "He's not dying," she said quickly, then softer. "But he's not well, and time is slipping." I crossed my arms. "You left me in the middle of nowhere. You watched it happen. You justified it. And when I didn't come crawling back, you froze my apartment lease and sent sarcastic texts about my survival." Her lip trembled. "We were wrong, all of us. And now we don't know how to make it right." "You don't," I said. "Not completely, but you can leave me alone. That would be something." She reached into her purse, pulled out a handwritten letter, and placed it on the desk. "If you ever wanted to read it, it's here. I won't contact you again if that's what you want. I just wanted you to know that we do see what we did. Finally." Then she left, just like that. No tears, no begging, no manipulation. I waited an hour before I opened the letter. It wasn't long, just a string of small belated recognitions. How she used to think her comments were constructive, that her silence during Dad's cruelty was protection instead of complicity. How she had mistaken dominance for parenting. It didn't make me cry. It didn't make me forgive her. But it made me realize something important. I wasn't looking for an apology anymore. I didn't need it to live. I didn't need them to see me. I had already seen myself. The next morning, I found Marcus waiting outside my studio apartment. He was dressed in a gray suit, fidgeting, his expression somewhere between shame and exhaustion. "What are you doing here?" I asked, locking my door behind me. "Mom said you might listen," he said, "that you were open to talking." I didn't say that. "Can I walk with you?" he asked. "Just 10 minutes. Against my better judgment, I nodded. We walked in silence past the diner, past the post office, down toward the river that ran behind town. I used to think you were weak, he said, without preamble. Too sensitive, a drama queen. That's what Dad said. That's what I believed. I said nothing. He glanced sideways. But you weren't weak. You were enduring things the rest of us were just repeating. I stopped walking. Why are you really here, Marcus? Dad's stepping down from the business. He's selling it. The three of us are splitting the proceeds. He wants you included. Why? Because it's yours, too, he said. Because guilt. Because maybe for the first time in his life he's willing to admit that you earned more than cruelty from this family. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just walked away. But later that night, sitting with Mal and Janine over dinner, I told them the whole story, every piece. I told them because I didn't want to carry it alone anymore, because the only way to keep something from poisoning your life is to speak it aloud and let it breathe. So what now? Mal asked. You going back? No, I said firmly, but I might go for a visit, one day, on my terms, as a guest, not as a daughter crawling home. Janine reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Whatever you choose, it's your choice. That's what matters. That night I walked back to my studio, turned off all the lights, and sat beside Vera the cactus in the dark. For the first time since that gas station in Redvale, I felt not just strong, but solid, rooted, whole. The past didn't vanish, but it no longer dictated the terms of my story. That power now belonged to me. 16 years after the day I was left at that gas station, I stood outside the same colonial-style house in Evanston, Illinois, that I had once called home. The brick facade hadn't changed, nor had the way the front porch sloped slightly to the right, or the oak tree that had always shed leaves too early each fall. The Uber had dropped me at the curb at exactly 1 in the afternoon, and I stood there for a moment with my suitcase in one hand and my heart stubbornly refusing to beat normally. I hadn't brought Mal, I hadn't brought Janine, I hadn't brought anyone. I came alone because I needed to face this alone. The invitation had arrived 2 months earlier, sent by my mother after my father's health took a sudden turn. They were moving to Arizona, selling the house, hosting one final family gathering before the chapter closed completely. She had written that there were no expectations, just a chance. I hadn't answered, but I showed up. The front door opened before I could knock. My mother stood in the doorway wearing a navy sweater set and that same reserved smile that had once passed for warmth. "You came," she said. "Yes," I replied, "only for the afternoon." "Of course," she said quickly. "Whatever you're comfortable with." I stepped inside and the scent hit me immediately, polish, citrus cleaner, and the faintest trace of pine. The house looked like it always had. The hallway mirror, the photos on the wall. Except now there were new ones of my brothers with their wives and children, of vacations I hadn't been invited to, of milestones I'd never been told about. Brett was in the backyard grilling. His kids, all 3 of them, were running in circles with water guns. Liam's wife, Anna, was setting up folding chairs with my mother. I walked out, and every head turned toward me at once. "Layla," Brett said, sounding like he didn't believe I was real. "You look different." "I am," I said. Liam approached with a hesitant smile. "Thanks for coming," he said, hands in his pockets. "The kids have heard about their Aunt Layla for years." "Really?" I asked. "Only good things," he added quickly. "Mostly." We shared a weak laugh. I sat under the patio umbrella with a glass of lemonade and watched the scene unfold. It was surreal, so familiar and so foreign at the same time. There were no jokes at my expense, no biting sarcasm, just a strange stillness, as if no one quite knew what role I was meant to play. After lunch, my mother approached me. "Your father would like to see you," she said softly. "He's in the study." The room hadn't changed. Still dark wood paneling. Still the leather armchair he used to command like a throne. But now Malcolm Bennett sat slouched, thinner than I remembered, hair fully gray, hands trembling slightly around his glass of water. "Layla," he said, "thanks for coming." "I didn't come for thanks," I said. "Then why?" he asked. "Closure," I said. "Clarity." "You deserve both," he said after a moment, "and more." "Do I?" I asked. "After everything?" "You do," he said, "because we failed you. I failed you. I let you grow up thinking cruelty was love and silence was safety. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I see it now. Too late, I know, but I see it." I sat down across from him, folding my hands in my lap. "Why did you do it?" I asked. "Really? Why?" "Because I thought that's what made strong people," he said. "My father was harder on me than I was on you, and I survived. I thought I was preparing you for the world, but all I did was teach you to fear the people who were supposed to protect you." "I didn't just fear you," I said. "I hated myself because of you." He closed his eyes. I know that now." Silence filled the room, heavy, real. "You built something incredible," he said finally. "Your company, your life. You didn't need us." "No," I said, "but I still wanted you, and that was the worst part. Wanting love from people who thought mocking me was affection." He nodded slowly. "You don't have to forgive me. You don't have to stay. But thank you for letting me say this." I stood. "I'm not staying, but I'm glad I came. I needed to look at you and say, I made it anyway." I walked out of the study, past the living room where new family photos lined the shelves, past the staircase where I once cried behind a railing while my brothers laughed at my expense, past my mother who watched me with eyes full of words she still couldn't speak. I stepped out into the cool, late afternoon and inhaled. Not relief, not peace, but something cleaner than bitterness. The plane back to Wyoming was quiet. I stared out the window at the clouds, fingers tracing the edge of my phone. Mal had texted, "Dinner's waiting when you land. I made your favorite." I smiled. I landed in Jackson, drove the familiar highway home, and walked into the small house Mal and I now shared. Janine had left flowers on the porch. The girls from the studio had sent me a photo of the new client wall we'd just finished designing. I curled up on the couch with Mal and told him everything, every word. "How do you feel now?" he asked. "Finished," I said, "like that door finally shut." "And does it feel good?" I nodded. "It feels like I'm finally in the right house with the right people, living the right story." That weekend, I took Vera the cactus out to the porch, replanted her in a new ceramic pot, and whispered, "We're not in survival mode anymore." The air was crisp. The sun was gold. Somewhere behind me, my chosen family moved about their lives real, whole, flawed, but kind. And I knew, with more certainty than I had ever known anything before, that the family you choose matters more than the one you're born into. The people who see you, not as a punchline, not as a project, but as a person. That's the family that counts. That's where home begins.